Can you feel it, Jets fans? Can you feel it in the air? You can practically smell it. New York Jets football training camp kicking off roughly 48 hours from now, give or take a couple hours. And as always, there will be plenty of training camp battles to go over. We're doing that today. I'm Glenn Naughton with Jet Nation Radio and JetNation.com. Be sure to log into JetNation.com, where you can register and become a part of what is the most active Jets message board on the web. And this time of year, things really ramp up, don't they? Because there's going to be a lot to talk about. I mean, listen, every year, every team, there are training camp battles. Not every training camp battle has to be about a starting spot or a glamour spot. It doesn't always have to be quarterback. You can have battles up and down the roster, offense, defense, second string, third string. And the Jets have plenty of that and more this year with a new regime in place. There is some talent. We've talked about that. There are some questions. There are many. We've talked about those. And we're going to try to answer some of them today. So how are we doing, Jets fans? Feeling good? I know that I've upset a lot of people this offseason because of my negative prognostications, my negative takes. I hate the team. You're not a real fan. All that, the same typical stuff. I mean, have thicker skin, first of all, anybody who's saying stuff like that. Not everyone has to think every guy in the roster is going to be a superstar. I see some of these Twitter accounts and, fans and everybody, they can sign the, last guy on the scrap heap. And it's, this dude's he's going to be something else. This guy's going to be awesome. Watch, keep an eye on him. And we all do that to a degree with you want to find lesser known guys, right? It's the off season. It's the slow part of the season. You're trying to pick through the roster and find a guy that you're like, oh, maybe this guy's a little better than people realize. Let's kind of bring him to people's attention and see if anything comes of that. But today we're going to go over the battles that, look, if you go through, I'm sure you could find a couple that I'm not spending as much time on as you might like. I might leave a name off that you would like to see on there. But we're not going to do 47 different battles for the 53-man roster, but we're going to do a bunch. We're going to talk right off the top, starting, even though it's not for a starting position, we're going to start a quarterback. We know Justin Fields is the starter, unquestioned. Tyrod Taylor is the backup, unquestioned, barring injury. But will this team carry 3 quarterbacks on the active roster? Probably not. But you better believe they're going to have an arm on the practice squad in the event of an injury, and you just hope like hell another team doesn't like that guy and snatch him up, and then you don't have a third quarterback where you have to go out and get a guy that you don't like as much as the guy that you lost. But the 2 names, of course, this year, Adrian Martinez, who was with the Jets last season, and undrafted rookie free agent Brady Cook. If you've been listening to this show for any length of time leading up to the draft, you know where I'm leaning here. I'm a big Brady Cook guy. Loved his game at Mizzou. I feel like he played at in a more competitive conference than Martinez ever has. Martinez had some success in the UFL. I get that. But in terms of their body of work, Martinez, and for me with these 2 guys, it comes down to one thing, and that's turnovers. Like Martinez turns the ball over so much. I know, and I've talked about how he cleaned it up in the UFL and he didn't throw as many interceptions as he did in college. But Brady Cook just does such a great job protecting the football. At least he did in college, right? We don't always see that translate to the pros, but you do see it to some degree. Guys who tend to protect the football in college are going to protect it better than guys who didn't. And that's what it's going to come down to here for me. Now, listen, it's possible. I'm not sitting here saying any, excuse me, I'm saying any of these are locks. I can say that right off the top. I mean, we are literally guessing. This is basically integrating. I was going to do a show just highlighting the camp battles, and that would suffice. But I thought, let's have a little more fun and let's pick some winners. We'll get some right, get some wrong, and that's the way it goes. But I could see, again, having said Cook protects the ball better, Martinez is the more veteran player. And if he makes fewer mistakes or if he's grasping the offense better, these are things we won't know until the preseason progresses. But I like Cook better as a player is what I'm going to boil that down to. I think he protects the ball better. They can both run. They can both run really well. Might even give Martinez the edge in that, but not by much. They're both really good runners. Both have enough arm. I think Cook's got the better arm. So that's who I'm going to go with. I'm going to say Cook wins the QB3 job behind Fields and Tyrod Taylor. How we doing, Dane? How we doing, Rep New York? Running back. We know who the starter is. We know it's Brees. We know Braylon Allen's going to take that number 2 spot. Isaiah Davis at RB3 seems to be the consensus, and that wouldn't surprise me. But I'm going to, honestly, this one, I think there's going to be a couple of these battles that I think they're going to be close enough, or I think the players are close enough in talent that it really is just a coin flip. Donovan Edwards and Isaiah Davis competing for that 3rd spot. I'm going to say Davis gets it. But if Edwards shows something on specials, if they audition him as a return man and he's better than Davis in that role, then I could see Edwards winning that job. Again, this regime didn't draft Davis. Edwards was a phenomenal player in college. I did say, and others have said that he did look to have possibly lost a step in college after his knee injury, but he still had a very good season for Michigan. He can catch the ball out of the backfield. They both can do that. But that, I think, is going to be, if they are sort of, because look, sometimes you see these battles, we expect it to be a battle, and it comes in a camp, and one guy just doesn't get the reps. And it's you realize in short order, okay, they've already made the decision here, and it's not going to be like hey, let's put these guys side by side and see who can do what. Sometimes it's just, we like this guy, we'll give this guy some reps just to, lighten the load on the regulars, but a guy isn't given a fair shot. Because basically what I'm saying, if you give Davis and Edwards both an equal fair shot, I can see that coming down to the wire and being a toss-up. Wide receiver 2. Now, you could really say, and we've talked about this, outside of Garrett Wilson, you could say wide receiver 2, 3, 4, 5. How many they carrying? If you're carrying 6, there's 5 spots wide open. If you're carrying 5, there's 4 spots wide open. Nothing is, things are so far from settled at receiver. I'm going to say between Josh Reynolds and Allen Lazard for wide receiver 2, I'm going to go with Reynolds. I think he's got the more reliable hands, and I think the fact that he has worked with these coaches before at previous stops gives him a little edge. I think Lazard, we saw how much better he was with Aaron Rodgers versus without, and he obviously will not have Aaron Rodgers this year. So I'm going to say Lazard falls to Reynolds in that wide receiver 2 battle. Then at wide receiver 3, Malachi Corley squaring off against Xavier Gipson. Again, specials may play a factor, but I think Corley being the more physical guy, I think that's what Aaron Glenn wants. I think this team is going to be ground and pound, and when it comes to lining up and blocking dudes and potentially putting a DB on their backside, I think you want Malachi Corley in there for that, and then work Corley in as a receiver, because we've seen what he can do. We saw, well, we didn't see a whole lot as a pro, did we? Thank you, Robert Saleh and Jeff Ulbrich. But I think, if you go back and just watch their college film and watch what Xavier Gipson has done as a pro, he hasn't done a whole lot. Like, Malachi Corley is the bigger, stronger, more capable guy. So I'm gonna say Corley wins that job. And then beyond that, the wide receiver depth chart is such a Lazard, Lazard, like him or not, he's not a bad option if he makes your roster as your 4th receiver, or, depending on how you view it, is your slot your 3. But there are some, Ontario Wilson, he's a guy that we've talked about. You look at his production in Florida State and the CFL, like, he's a guy that just does find a way to produce wherever he's been. Brandon Smith looked very good in camp last year. I went back and watched him in Iowa, and I came back really impressed. Like, the guy makes some dazzling catches. You saw it in college. You saw it when he was given a chance in preseason last year. And maybe he makes some noise this year. Of course, you expect Arian Smith, the 4th round pick, to make it. Quentin Skinner is a guy to keep an eye on, because, again, that frame, that 6'5", big-bodied guy, he's the type of guy you want when you've got Justin Fields as your quarterback. You want those guys with that, tremendous catch radius and good hands, which Quentin Skinner does have. Jamal Pritchett, the undrafted rookie out of South Alabama, and Dymere Miller, another undrafted guy. These guys are going to be battling for those 5th and 6th spots. Tyler Johnson, who we featured on JetNation.com on the front page the other day, the receiver out of Minnesota, had a fairly productive rookie year in Tampa Bay with Tom Brady. Hasn't done a lot since then. I love them coming out of Minnesota. Unearthed some old pre-draft tweets I had on him saying I thought he would be a good day 3 pick for the Jets. And now he's here, so we'll see what happens there. And then, of course, you've got Irv Charles, who will try to make it primarily on special teams. He's a guy who's done a tremendous job as a gunner. Let's see. Chris, CB Jets fan. Hey, everyone. Yeah, thanks, Chris. Chris saying hit the like button. Says Glenn deserves it. Well, deserve, like, whatever you want to call it. I do appreciate that, though, Chris. Thank you. And please do hit the like, hit the subscribe, tune in. And look, season's ramping up, folks. So obviously, you're going to be a lot more to talk about. But the receiver depth chart is going to be an enormous question mark up and down. Outside of one, it's all question marks. Excuse me. Pardon me. Flipping over to defense. Well, actually, tight ends real quick. Of course, Mason Taylor signed his deal today, 4 years, $10 million. Got that done. This was all just posturing between agents and teams and how much guaranteed money are you going to give us? And everybody just kind of held out till the last, not held out, but nobody signed until the final day before they're going to camp, at least in the case of Taylor, the last weekday before he goes to camp. He signs today. Fully expect him to be tight end 1. And hopefully, the Jets, for the first time in many, many, many years, have a good homegrown tight end that they drafted, a guy they plucked. Damn, how good could Johnny Mitchell have been if he'd stuck with football? I always wonder, not just what could have been, like what happened there. First round pick, immensely talented, had some games where you're like, look at this guy, he's going to be phenomenal. Walks away. What was it, a year later, 2 years, he comes back again, 1 or 2 practices and quits again and leaves. And sometimes I see him on, like, people, like, every once in a while, he's a guy who pops up. And they're like, former Jet Johnny Mitchell. And I'm like, yeah, but I mean, former Jet for a handful of games, walked away twice. Anyway, I digress. Sorry, Johnny Mitchell. That's my very early days as a Jets fan. He might be one of the first Jets draft picks I got right, as like a 12 or 13-year-old. I was just, and all you could do was read about guys back then. And I was like, oh, they need a tight end. This guy, Johnny Mitchell. Hopefully they take him. Didn't work out. Hopefully, in the case of Mason Taylor, it does work out. I think he will be the tight end 1 on day 1. Now the battle for the tight end 2 spot. Does Ruckert win that job? I think they're going to want a guy who can be a, just sort of better than average blocker. And Ruckert is that guy. I get last year his blocking felt like it slipped a little bit, but I think he'll be the guy there that wins that 2 spot. It's going to be interesting to see if he develops with Justin Fields, with his old college quarterback. And we've all talked about it. Is he going to be a guy who starts to develop now? And I don't mean superstar, but can he give you 400 or 500 yards and 4 or 5 touchdowns this year as your tight end 2? I'd take that. That'd be a nice step in the right direction. But of course, you've got Stone Smart. You've got Neil Johnson, probably the least known guy among Jets fans. More of a blocking tight end out of SMU. But he was one of the guys, I believe he was one of the guys they had in with the 8 players they brought into rookie camp, the 8 veterans to get an extended look at. But I think Taylor starts. I think Ruckert wins the tight end 2 job. I'm not sure Johnson makes the roster. I think Stone Smart's got a very good shot. But the most interesting one to me is Zach Kuntz. And look, I get it. Like I'm one of those people. You like fall in love with his measurables. You're like, how many guys on the planet, not just in the league, how many human beings on the planet can match that guy's athletic profile? And if you can make him a pretty good football player, then the plays, the ability of the guy with 6'8", with those ups, with that speed, he can be a game changer. But he also might be a guy who's not physical enough for the league, and maybe he doesn't even make the cut this year. I don't know. None of us have seen enough of him to say. Anyone who feels very strongly one way or the other is fooling themselves. Like, what have we seen that you could say, okay, based on this, I think that even if you want to look at preseason last year, we don't know how they worked him through the season, if any part of his game developed from training camp up until now with all the practices and OTAs and all this stuff. So we have no idea where he is, but we know that he's a physical freak. Like, give me as many of those guys as you got. Defensive end. This I'll tell you what, I've said many times during the offseason that this edge group, the edge guys, the D ends, whatever you want to call them, outside linebackers, the guys who get after the quarterback, basically. It's not the group it used to be, and when you just look at it on paper, Michael Clemens is still here, folks. For all the talk from Jets fans about about how he was a lock to get cut, and I can't wait to the offseason so this guy's gone, and he's the first dude that's going to be off the roster. It's funny, isn't it? Because we all love Aaron Glenn. Everyone's like pumped up, fired up. Well, not everyone, but you know what I mean. The overwhelming majority of fans, from what I've seen, be it on here, be it on Twitter, be it on Jet Nation, everybody loves Aaron Glenn. And a lot of people don't like Michael Clemens. Well, Aaron Glenn is keeping Mike up to this point. Maybe he's cut week 1. I don't know. I mean, like week 1 of camp. I don't know what they do. But he's still there. So he's not what a lot of Jets fans view him as. Oh, he's terrible. He's useless. Get rid of him. He can't do anything right. I've said many times, I think he can be effective as a run stopper. Too many mistakes as a pass rusher. I get that. But maybe they see him as a sub package guy who can be very effective in certain situations, a role player. Teams have role players. Perhaps the Jets view Michael Clemens as that. Then you've got Eric Watts, Braden McGregor, both undrafted free agents who made the roster last year. If I had to pick one of those two, I would say Watts makes it. I think his size gives him a little bit of an advantage, and he can maybe move around a little bit more than McGregor, maybe play him inside a tiny bit. And then Rashad Weaver, he's the veteran in the group. Drafted a couple years ago. He's got a 5.5 sack season under his belt. And really, he looked impressive. Just a few days ago. I watched a little bit of him when they signed him, but watching full games. And I thought the other day, let me just look at the best of his best in the NFL. Let me look at some highlights. Like, you don't fully evaluate a player on highlights, but it's a good it's a good way to look at what a guy does best. And I'll tell you what, the reps where he was winning, and I don't just mean the sacks, I mean the pressures, the hits, like good long arm, good get off, good motor. And I'm looking at him thinking, all right, if this staff is the defensive geniuses that we're expecting them to be, Rashad Weaver, like he could be a factor. He absolutely could. In terms of picking who's going to make it out of that group, I would say McGregor is the odd man out. And again, not knowing how many guys they're going to carry, I think Watts has a shot. I think Weaver has a shot. And don't take this as a knock on McGregor. I talked about him at the Senior Bowl last year. I thought he looked really good. Not the most athletic guy, but I thought he had good length. I thought he had good athleticism. So I was happy to see him. And if you look at his film last year, it looked like he was on the verge of just like he had a few plays where, he's like an inch, he swipes at the quarterback, swipes at the ball, and he's that close. And look, sometimes that close is the difference between being in the league and being out of the league. I understand that. But as a rookie UDFA who was coming on, I felt like his game was getting better. Then he got kind of pushed to the side. So we'll see what happens there. But I like Watts to make it. I think he can be more versatile. I like Weaver and Clemens. Now, if they plan on kicking Clemens inside, I like his chances a lot more because we've talked about it a million times over. They lack run stoppers on the interior. I think that's a role where Michael Clemens can be effective. And moving to the interior, you got Quinnen Williams, of course, is your top dog on the inside. Then you got Byron Cowart, you got Nadi, you got Phidarian Mathis out of Alabama, who we've talked about. I'm going to say, and Derek Nadi is the DT from the Chiefs. Just based on what I've seen, and based also on the fact that this team needs run stoppers so badly, I think Mathis has a shot to stick. I think he's sort of the bigger of these guys. He's younger than Nadi. I believe he's younger than Coward. He's younger than Nadi. Better run stopper, and he's a guy, if you can coach him up, you're getting a guy who fills a more pressing need than the other guys do. Now, does Nadi make it based on, well, I mean, I expect him to make the roster. But in terms of does he make it as DT2? Listen, if Aaron Glenn is anything like Bill Parcells, we did see many times with Parcells where he would start the veteran, the experienced guy over the younger rookies. He didn't like the risk of the mistakes that rookies brought with them. So we often saw veteran guys get the nod. So if Aaron Glenn is along those lines, then I think a guy like Nadi or Cowart win it. But I do like Mathis and we've talked about Mulba, we've talked Fatorma Mulba, we've talked about Peyton Page, the Clemson and West Virginia DTs. Both guys look solid on film. Like if to me, this is the year to keep guys like that because you're not going to the playoffs, you're not winning the Super Bowl. Collect some pieces, and I'm hoping that both those guys, Page and Mulba, get a ton of preseason reps to show what they can do and hopefully develop into something. Outside linebackers, the Jets lift Jamin Davis, they list Aaron Smith. We know who the starters are, of course. And I really think that I think Davis, I think there's a name I didn't write down. Who did I not include? One second. The uh the Cincinnati kid. Was he not on here? I pulled up a depth chart and jotted down the names that I thought were the most prominent camp battles. I think Francisco Marigoa wins the backup spot to Jamie and Sherwood. Uh, okay, Jared Bartlett. Okay, so Aaron Smith is one I had written down. Jared Bartlett, I didn't. But to me, smaller school guy in Smith. Bartlett played a bunch at I believe Cincinnati and I believe West Virginia, if I'm not mistaken. I think Smith does a really nice job of closing on the ball, like recognizing what's going on in front of him when he sees the play unfolding, reacts really well, gets there in a hurry. Doesn't have I don't think his measurables are off the charts. I don't have them in front of me, but I don't think his RAS or his 40 times were eye popping. But sometimes that quick trigger, that downhill, that quick reaction, which you do tend to see from him. So I think he's got a shot. But Davis is the guy that I would pick on as someone who, and I've talked about this recently. I think he's a guy that not a lot of fans are counting on to make the roster. I think he's got a really good shot. Um, Aaron Smith too. Like I said, if the way he played in college at SC State, if that translates, and we see him doing some of those things as a pro, I think Aaron Glenn's really going to like that, and they're going to want a guy like that on their defense. Cornerback 3, 4, 5. I mean, we know who the nickel is. We know Michael Carter's the nickel. Isaiah Oliver, like I'm not counting him as a nickel or a safety. He's a DB. I think he makes the roster as a DB. But at your corners, of course, you've got Sauce and Stevens as your two starters. You've got Thomas behind them. I think I've said before, I think he's going to take Stevens' job at some point during the season. Then you've got Jarek Bernard Converse and Quantez Stiggers. Those two guys battling. I've said this before, and maybe I'm crazy, but I believe both those guys play well enough that one of them gets traded. I think by the end of camp, the Jets are going to have a nice depth chart. And, they're going to have like 4 or 5 guys who they think can play. And that's a position where there's always a need. And I think a team is going to call and say, we'll give you this for JBC or we'll give you this for Quantez Stiggers. If I was a team, I'd go for JBC. He's just got more experience against big time competition, being an SEC guy, having played at LSU, having played at Kansas State. I would prefer JBC, but I think one of those guys gets traded at some point. So listen, you could carry 5. They could all stick on the initial roster. We'll see what happens there. And as I said, Dean Clark is we're talking about corners, nickels. Clark is a guy right up there with Isaiah Oliver, though, right? I just said I think Isaiah Oliver makes it because of his depth or his versatility. Dean Clark, ton of versatility. Oliver has the edge there again, the veteran experience. But Dean Clark is one I wouldn't count out as depth at nickel and safety. Moving on to the guys who would be exclusively safeties. You've got Tony Adams and Andre Sisco. I think most people, we'll start with Andre Sisco because I've said before, I think he's the guy who's going to have a breakout season. You look at Aaron Glenn, you look at the work in New Orleans and Detroit, and Aaron Glenn always has like a safety that emerges and becomes a ball hawk and a game breaker. I think that's going to be Andre Sisco this year. We loved him in Syracuse. We saw moments with him in Jacksonville. I think he can be that guy that gets you 5+ interceptions. After Sisco, I think Malachi Moore has a shot to unseat Tony Adams. We know Woody Johnson's not the biggest fan, which doesn't help. For those of you who don't recall, Woody Johnson, made the call to bench Tony Adams last year when things weren't going well. Apparently, Tony Adams was the problem last year. But I think Adams is less likely to beat out Malachi Moore, being that Malachi Moore is the draft pick, and we know that he is not liked by the owner. Jalen Simpson, he's a guy the Jets picked up in season last year when the Colts let him go, former Auburn safety and corner. Listen, I like the safety group. I'm not saying I think these guys are going to be great, but I look at Malachi Moore, I look at Jalen Simpson, I look at Jarius Monroe out of Tulane, who I thought did some good things in camp last year. He managed to stick around as a UDFA. I could see any of these guys. Again, that you can sort of file these under guys we've just not seen enough of to say comfortably who we think wins these spots. But I think the starters end up being Sisco and more with Tony Adams as a backup, and then Dean Clark again. I think is a guy who's got a shot to stick. And then it'll be Jalen Simpson and Jarius Monroe. Monroe's funny. Monroe's one of those guys. I watch him and I thought, athletic, not like off the charts athletic, but pretty athletic. And then I look at his numbers and they just don't match up. And sometimes you see that. Look at Michael Clemens' RAS is like over 8, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. You wouldn't think that watching him. You don't watch Michael Clemens and think, wow, he's very athletic. He's kind of stiff. He's powerful. There's no denying that. But he doesn't look like this bendy, explosive guy. And that's why, look, the RAS, all this stuff, it's fun to look at, it's fun to track, but it doesn't always translate on game day. So there's your safeties. Like I said, expect Cisco and Moore to start. Expect Adams to be a backup. And then between Simpson, Monroe, and Clark, gun to my head, make me pick one. Because safeties, teams don't carry a ton of safeties. I'm going to say it's between Clark and Monroe, even though I like Simpson. I'll go with the. I'm going to say Monroe sticks, Clark outside shot, maybe practice squad. And a big reason for that being Isaiah Oliver. I don't think they're going to keep two of those guys, Clark and Oliver, and I think Oliver gets the nod over Clark. I think that covers it, folks. I think that's everyone. I think we got the quarterbacks, running backs, just going through my list here. Wide receiver, DTs, D-end, outside linebacker, inside linebacker we talked about briefly, the corners, the safeties. I think those are your battles. I think they'll be fun. I'm looking forward to it. The offseason, as far as I'm concerned, once we hit Friday night, offseason's officially over. It's an NFL weekend. Obviously not not playing games just yet. But teams are going to be on the field practicing. Wish I could have been out there. Not to be this year. Hopefully next season, back out at camp. Way too early to say. Who knows? I believe Jet Nation will have coverage out there. We will have folks on the field bringing you updates via Twitter and joining us on this show as well. I think we've got a couple of different people lined up who work with the site and for the site who will be going out there. Hopefully, lots of good stuff to report. Hopefully the camp competitions are fierce and tough to call. That's what you want. You want competitors competing. And the Jets have a bunch of them. And we know that Aaron Glenn is a guy who's going to value that. And, the more I see, the more I listen to Aaron Glenn, the more I think about what we saw with Parcells, the better I feel about him. And it's not like I never felt bad or never felt good about him. Dane, Danger Zone says, like them both, come get one, Atlanta, San Fran. Talking about the corners, I'm assuming. Oh, yeah, I think you put that up there while I was talking corners, didn't you, Dane? Yeah, me too. And like I said, one of the tougher spots to call for me because I really like JBC. But Stiggers is such an interesting story too. It's like how much higher will this guy go? Because his story to get to where he has, how quickly he has, is nothing short of incredible. So, like I said, some young talented corners. Stevens, if he keeps that job all year, we'll see. I think Thomas takes it at some point. I don't know if it'll be out of camp or later in the year. We'll see what happens there. Excuse me. But that'll wrap this one up, folks. Monday, players report. I believe it's vets report, and they'll do their weigh-ins and their physicals and all that. And then in short order after that, they will be on the field, on the grass, getting ready to roll. And real quick, Dane says, Stiggers JBC, I like JBC more. Yeah, same here. JBC, to me, more versatility as well. Has played safety, has played corner, played at K-State, played at LSU, major competition. And last preseason, I thought was the most improved player on the roster. Reminded me of Jamie and Sherwood a year or two ago when I watched him in camp. And I was like, this dude, like, if you remember when CJ Mosley went down during the year, I think that was the first thing I tweeted out. I was like, Sherwood is ready. Like, because people were freaking out. We need Mosley. He's our leader. He puts guys in position. And I was like, calm down. Jamie and Sherwood's ready for this because he'd shown so much improvement. And now I feel like that's what we saw last year with JBC. From the previous year to last year, phenomenal job in the preseason. And I feel like he's ready for a bigger role. Will he get it? Will it be with the Jets? Will it be somewhere else? We will find out that and more in the coming days, weeks, and months. Football season, folks, 48 hours away. Have a good one, Jets fans.